Thanks for clicking. Evergrande promised this week that it planned to resume all of its building projects in an effort to calm down the storm created by the ongoing mortgage boycotts. And, demonstrating why we use Frank Gallagher memes for Evergrande, the troubled developer also had its headquarters seized in Hong Kong in the same week it promised to complete these projects.
What did I do wrong?
We also had some surprising news this week as it was reported that Chinese homeowners are rushing to pay off their mortgages amid uncertainty over investments, zero COVID, and the Chinese economy. And the uncertainty over the property market is showing up in the aggregate data, as warnings grow about future defaults without help from Beijing. So what I want to do today is go over Evergrande's promise to fulfill its obligations and the seizure of its headquarters, look at why China's homeowners are rushing to pay off their mortgages and why that's not a great sign, and then I want to look at how these pressures are leading to more demands for Beijing to step in. China's problems are continuing to add up, and as we'll see, this is leading to a reduction in overall consumer sentiment. China is Canada's second largest trading partner, and given that we've seen a major reduction of Chinese imports coming from Canada, what happens there will obviously have a big impact here. As such, we'll continue to follow its real estate and growing economic problems on this channel every Friday. Click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, let's get into Evergrande. We've spoken at great length on this channel about the spreading mortgage boycotts going on throughout China, and this week Evergrande addressed those boycotts, promising to resume construction on all remaining projects. Evergrande has been under a lot of pressure to complete these projects and calm down these protests, especially leading up to the 20th Party Congress, where President Xi Jinping wants to ensure there are no signs of social instability. As of right now, the developer says it is working on 668 of its 706 projects, but the plan is to be working on every single one of their projects by September 30th, just a few weeks before the 20th Party Congress. And Evergrande's commitment to get these projects back up and running was clearly evident this week, as they've obviously been not using their money to pay their debts, as its $1 billion headquarters in Hong Kong was seized by creditors. The property in Hong Kong had been pledged as collateral for $1 billion in loans in 2020, and while Evergrande's debts have continued to go unpaid, their headquarters has now been seized.
I'll find a place for us to squat.
It's not just the creditors to these property developers to Evergrande that are getting frustrated, getting worried about the overall state of the Chinese economy. We learned this week that there's been a major uptick of Chinese homeowners rushing to pay off their mortgages early, with many dipping or completely using up their investments to get those mortgages paid off. While the aggregate data on how many mortgages have been paid off is not yet available, we did learn that some banks have seen the amount of mortgages being paid off early increase by 13%. Although getting their money early is a good sign for China's troubled banks, depending on how you look at it, it's not a great sign for the overall Chinese economy, and demonstrates a level of pessimism about the overall state of the Chinese economy not seen even in 2020 or during the 2008 financial crisis. Rushing to pay off their debts because they are so worried about the Chinese economy means that they're not going to be spending elsewhere. And right now, Chinese authorities, Beijing, the PBOC, want Chinese citizens spending. That's why they've lowered interest rates multiple times over the past few months. Beijing doesn't want people paying off their debt. They don't want that money disappearing from the economy. They want that money out in the market, out buying goods, out buying services.
You pay till I tell you don't have to pay no more.
Beijing has the opposite problem that we have here in the West, where the central banks are looking to pull money out of the economy. Beijing wants money put into the economy. So, consumer sentiment on the part of the everyday Chinese homeowner paying off their mortgages early isn't a great sign for Chinese consumer confidence, and isn't a great sign for the rebound of the economy as a whole, as money is disappearing out of the economy, and if they're paying their mortgages off early, they're not spending that money elsewhere. And the property crisis that is causing a lot of this negative consumer sentiment isn't getting any better anytime soon. It was reported this week that private developers have seen their profits drop 188% over the past 6 months. with state-owned property developers seeing their profits drop only 27%. And with all of the default and the plunge in profits that we've seen on the part of these real estate developers, this has severely limited their cash on hand, which has dropped almost 14% over the past 6 months. And with their cash drying up, it's not as though these developers have many options as onshore and offshore investors. Domestic and international investor funding has all but dried up for these real estate developers. In this massive drop in profits, and this major drop in the cash on hand and warnings of defaults, have led to even more warnings that if Beijing does not step in to bail out these real estate developers, step in to provide some liquidity, some more cash on hand, we are likely to see more and more defaults as time goes on. So all in all, not a very great week for China. Evergrande has pledged to resume all of its projects, though the developer is not exactly well known for its foresight. And then in the same week, it had its headquarters seized by creditors. Chinese consumers are getting more and more wary about the state of the economy, about the state of the property crisis, and are paying off their debts early. They are taking money voluntarily out of the economy. Here in the West, the central banks are trying to forcibly take money out of the economy vis-a-vis quantitative tightening and interest rate hikes, and in China, they are doing it voluntarily. And finally, the real estate developers continue to warn of more and more defaults if Beijing does not step up support. Beijing has been stepping up support for the past few months, and we've talked about that at great length on this channel. But clearly, judging from the continual defaults, the plunge in profits, and the negative consumer sentiment on the part of Chinese homeowners, it has not been enough. Whether or not President Xi Jinping will step up efforts to revive the real estate sector, to revive the economy, to help normalize social stability in the lead up to the 20th Party Congress remains to be seen. But we'll obviously continue to have updates out on those moves by the president, by Beijing, on this channel every Friday. Click like and subscribe if you want to get those updates, but for now, thanks so much for watching.